3 days, no food. Not a single bite, not a cracker, not a spoonful of soup, just water. And the slow, quiet passage of time. Now, before you call that extreme, before you picture someone pale and trembling in a corner, I want you to consider something. Your body has been preparing for exactly this moment for 200,000 years. Every cell in you carries a blueprint written long before grocery stores, before agriculture, before the concept of a meal schedule even existed. And inside, that blueprint is a set of instructions that only activates when food disappears. Most people will never trigger those instructions in their entire lives. But the ones who do, they come back describing something that sounds less like deprivation and more like awakening. They talk about mental clarity, so sharp, it feels almost foreign. They talk about a stillness in the body that no supplement has ever given them. They talk about hunger that peaks, then dissolves into something that feels strangely like peace. Science is now catching up to what they already experienced. And what researchers have found inside the cells of fasting humans is, without exaggeration, one of the most remarkable stories in modern biology. This is that story. Stay with me, because what happens inside you hour by hour over 72 hours of fasting will completely reframe how you think about food, hunger, and what your body is truly capable of. The moment your last meal is digested, a countdown begins. You don't, Mama Verkind, feel it at first. Life feels normal. You are going about your day, maybe working, maybe scrolling, thinking about what to eat next without realizing that your body has already begun quietly shifting its entire operating strategy. In the first few hours after eating, your body is still riding the wave of that last meal. Glucose from your food circulates through the bloodstream. Insulin rises to shuttle it into cells, and everything functions exactly as textbooks describe. You are in the fed state, the mode your body defaults to in the modern world, a state of constant fueling and constant storage. But here is the thing nobody tells you. That fed state, the one we live in almost permanently now, is not your body's only gear. It is not even its most powerful gear. It is just the most familiar one. As the hours pass and no new food arrives, something begins to shift. Insulin levels start dropping. The liver, which has been holding onto glycogen like a responsible accountant holding reserves, begins releasing glucose into the bloodstream to keep things stable. Your blood sugar stays steady. You feel mostly fine, maybe a little hungry around hour 8 or 9. Your stomach sends up a signal. Your brain acknowledges it. But the deeper machinery is already making calculations you are not consciously aware of. Somewhere in your hypothalamus, a message is being processed. Food hasn't arrived. Begin preparation, not panic. Preparation. Because your body, unlike your anxious mind, has seen this before. It has handled it 10,000 times across the history of your species, and it knows exactly what to do. By the time you reach the 12 to 16 hour mark, the glycogen stored in your liver is beginning to thin. This is the metabolic crossroads that separates the fed body from the fasting body. And most people in the modern world never reach it. They eat again before this transition ever begins. But for those who cross it, everything changes. Insulin, which had been declining. Steadily drops low enough to flip a critical switch. Your fat cells, which have been locked away like a vault, suddenly receive the signal they've been waiting for. The doors open. Fatty acids flood into the bloodstream. Your body is no longer looking for its next glucose delivery. It has discovered something better, something it built over millions of years of evolution for exactly this scenario. It is preparing to run on itself. What happens next is where the science becomes almost unbelievable. Your liver takes these fatty acids and begins converting them into molecules called ketones. These are not a metabolic emergency backup. They are not a sign that something is wrong. They are, in fact, a supremely efficient fuel source that your cells, especially your brain cells, are exquisitely designed to use. Ketones burn cleaner than glucose. They produce more energy per molecule with less oxidative byproduct. For your brain in particular, the switch to ketones is less like downgrading to emergency power and more like upgrading from a diesel generator to a clean electric engine. The hum is smoother, the output is steadier, and the mental fog that many people associate with hunger, for those who push through the first transitional discomfort, it doesn't last, it lifts. And what replaces it is something that fasters across cultures and centuries have described with almost identical language. A quiet, crystalline clarity around the 18 to 24-hour mark. The transition is well underway, and your body is confronting something remarkable. It no longer has its preferred fuel. It has adapted to a new one. But there is another process beginning in parallel, one that most people, even those who talk about fasting regularly, have never fully understood. Inside your cells, at the microscopic level, something ancient and extraordinary is switching on. It is called autophagy. The word comes from the Greek for self-eating. And while that sounds alarming, what it actually describes is one of the most sophisticated and life-preserving mechanisms in all of biology. Yoshinori Osumi, a Japanese cell biologist, spent decades unraveling this process. In 2016, he received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for it. What he discovered is that your cells, when deprived of external nutrition, turn inward. They begin identifying their own damaged components, broken proteins that have been accumulating for years, dysfunctional mitochondria that are producing more oxidative stress than energy, cellular debris that, left unchecked, becomes the foundation of aging, inflammation, and disease. The cell tags these components, packages them, and feeds them into its own recycling system, breaking them down into raw materials and rebuilding new functional components from the wreckage. Your body is not consuming itself in desperation. It is renovating itself with extraordinary precision. This is not a metaphor. This is molecular biology, and the implications of it stretch far beyond weight loss into territory that researchers are still mapping. Autophagy has been linked in peer-reviewed literature to protection against neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, where the accumulation of damaged proteins in neurons is a hallmark of disease progression. It has been linked to cancer suppression because precancerous cells with damaged DNA are among the first to be identified and cleared. It has been linked to improved metabolic function, reduced systemic inflammation, and slower biological aging. And it does not begin at the surface level. It happens inside every cell in your body simultaneously, like a city-wide renovation happening overnight while everyone sleeps. By the 24-hour mark, this process is building momentum. By 48 hours, it is in full swing, and the body doing it is not struggling. It is thriving in a way that constant feeding never allows. Now here is the part that surprises people most, because everything they have been told about hunger says it should get worse over time. That by day 2, you should be weak, dizzy, mentally impaired, desperate. And yet, the opposite frequently occurs. Around the 36 to 48-hour mark, after the initial transitional discomfort fades, and the body has fully committed to running on ketones, many people report a dramatic shift in how they feel. The persistent background noise of hunger, the urgency, the irritability, the preoccupation with food begins to quiet. Not because the body has given up, but because it no longer needs to panic. It has found its fuel. It is burning fat reserves, efficiently producing ketones steadily. And the very act of constant digestion that normally consumes enormous amounts of energy has been suspended. All of that energy, the energy your gut, your liver, your pancreas, and your intestines normally use to process and absorb food, is being redirected, and the body does not waste it. It puts it to work. Growth hormone is one of the most telling indicators of what is happening at this stage. Under normal feeding conditions, growth hormone pulses modestly throughout the day. During extended fasting, particularly in the 36 to 60-hour window, growth hormone levels can surge to 5 times their baseline. This is not an accident of biology. Growth hormone is your body's primary muscle preservation signal. It tells your tissues to hold onto lean mass to protect, structural protein to prioritize metabolic efficiency. The old fear that fasting burns muscle turns out to be dramatically overstated. At least over 3 days, your body is not cannibalizing itself. It is being selective, precise, and intelligent in ways that constant eating actually suppresses. Alongside the surge in growth hormone, insulin remains at its lowest sustained levels. And low insulin is not just about fat burning. It is about cellular sensitivity. The longer insulin stays low, the more sensitive your cells become to it when it eventually rises again. Improved insulin sensitivity is one of the most powerful predictors of long-term metabolic health, reduced risk of type 2 diabetes, and longevity. Your body is using this pause in eating to literally recalibrate one of its most fundamental systems. And your brain, by this point, is doing something that should feel impossible, but doesn't. It is performing better. Not just tolerably, not just adequately, but measurably better, in ways that researchers have now quantified. Ketones drive the production of a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, often called BDNF. Think of BDNF as fertilizer for neurons. It promotes the growth of new nerve cells, strengthens synaptic connections, and enhances the brain's ability to form memories, process information quickly, and regulate mood. Higher BDNF levels are associated with lower rates of depression and anxiety, faster learning, and sharper long-term memory. Your fasting brain is not a brain in crisis. It is a brain that has unlocked a biological upgrade that most people eating 3 meals a day every day of their lives never access. The mental sharpness that fasters describe is not psychological. It is neurochemical. It is real, and it makes evolutionary sense in a way that should stop you in your tracks. Your ancestors did not have the luxury of sitting still when food ran out. The ones who survived famine were the ones whose brains got sharper under pressure, who could think more clearly, move more strategically, and solve the problem of finding food with heightened focus. You carry their genes. And right now, at the 48-hour mark, those genes are expressing. What happens in the immune system over this same period is perhaps the most extraordinary finding of all. Researchers at the University of Southern California, studying both animal models and human subjects undergoing chemotherapy, made a discovery that initially seemed almost too good to be true. Extended fasting, specifically in the range of 48 to 72 hours, appears to trigger a regeneration of the immune system at the stem cell level. Here is the mechanism. When your body enters a prolonged fast, it identifies old, damaged, or underperforming immune cells as candidates for recycling through autophagy. Worn out white blood cells that have been circulating for too long. Immune cells carrying accumulated DNA damage. The aging soldiers of your internal defense force are quietly retired. And when refeeding begins, something remarkable follows. The stem cells that give rise to new immune cells, the master generators of your entire defense system, are activated. They proliferate. They produce fresh, efficient, genetically clean immune cells to replace the ones that were cleared. The result is not just a refreshed immune system. It is a rebuilt one, a biological reset of your body's most critical protective infrastructure, triggered not by a drug, not by a supplement, not by an injection, but by the simple absence of food. This finding has profound implications for people recovering from illness, managing autoimmune conditions, or undergoing treatments that compromise immunity. But it matters for healthy people too, because the gradual accumulation of aging, dysfunctional immune cells is one of the mechanisms behind the chronic low-grade inflammation that underlies heart disease, metabolic syndrome, neurodegeneration, and accelerated aging. You cannot feel that inflammation. It has no dramatic symptoms in its early stages, but it is there, building quietly over decades. And fasting may be one of the most powerful tools available to interrupt it. By the time you reach the 60 to 72-hour window, the final phase of this transformation, your body has achieved something that no meal, no workout, no supplement protocol has ever been able to replicate. It has run itself through a complete biological audit. Every system, Wanti-wiki Saskane, from your cells to your hormones to your immune army, has been stress tested, recalibrated, and renewed. Your mitochondria, the tiny power-generating organelles inside every cell, have been through a process called mitophagy, the selective removal of the most damaged ones. What remains are your best performing energy generators. And the signal created by the fasting period itself, the low insulin, the elevated growth hormone, the ketone metabolism, actually promotes the generation of new mitochondria to replace the ones that were cleared. You are not just cleaning house, you are rebuilding it with better materials. The gut microbiome, that vast and complex ecosystem of trillions of bacteria living inside your intestinal tract, undergoes its own reset during this period. Research into gut microbiology and fasting is still evolving, but early findings suggest that extended fasting creates conditions for beneficial microbial populations to reassert themselves. While the species, VAC, that thrive on constant sugar and processed food intake, lose their competitive advantage. The connection between gut microbiome diversity and mental health, immune function, metabolic efficiency, and even longevity is one of the most active areas of research in modern medicine. And fasting appears to be one of the most accessible interventions available to shift it in a favorable direction. Your digestive organs, which have been working constantly every day of your life, have now rested for 3 full days. The intestinal walls, which under normal conditions are perpetually managing the passage of food and fighting off pathogens in what it encounters, have had time to repair. The mucosal lining that protects the intestine from its own digestive acids and from the bacteria it contains is thicker, more resilient, more intact. The liver, your primary detoxification organ, has had uninterrupted time to process and clear accumulated compounds that constant intake never allows it to. Fully address. The organs that labor invisibly on your behalf every single day without rest or recognition have been given something they almost never receive: time. And then comes the moment of refeeding. The first meal after 72 hours is not just food. It is a signal. It is the trigger that tells every system in your body that the fast has ended, and the rebuilding phase can begin in earnest. Stem cells that were activated during the fast respond to the arrival of nutrients, accelerating tissue repair and regeneration. Insulin rises gently, guiding glucose into cells that are now exquisitely sensitive to it. The digestive system, rested and repaired, wakes up with a precision and responsiveness that most people last experienced in childhood. The first tastes are almost shockingly vivid. Food that you have eaten hundreds of times before tastes different, richer, more complex, more present. That is not imagination. That is biology. Your taste receptors, your olfactory sensitivity, even your emotional relationship to the act of eating have been recalibrated by the fast. What you choose to eat in that first refeeding window matters enormously. The digestive system, rested and sensitized, is not ready for a large, heavy, complex meal. The best approach is to begin gently. Bone broth, which provides minerals and amino acids in a form the gut can absorb immediately without requiring significant digestive work. Soft, easily digested foods like avocado or steamed vegetables, small portions that allow the digestive fire to rekindle gradually rather than flood a system that has been quiet for 3 days. The goal is not to reward yourself. The goal is to honor the process your body just completed by introducing nutrients in a way that amplifies rather than disrupts the regeneration already underway. There is one more thing that happens after a 72-hour fast that no blood test can measure. It is a shift in the relationship between you and food. Hunger, which before the fast felt like an emergency, a signal that demanded immediate response, like a fire alarm that could not be ignored, reveals itself to be something more manageable, more temporary, more psychological than you ever realized. You learn through direct experience rather than theory that you can feel hunger and not be harmed by it. that the discomfort of an empty stomach is not a threat, that your body, given the chance, does not fall apart without constant feeding. It adapts, it innovates, it heals. And in doing so, it teaches you something about yourself that no amount of reading could have delivered. You are not as fragile as you thought. You are not as dependent as the modern food environment has conditioned you to believe. There is a version of your body operating right now, right this moment, that is running just below the surface of daily life, waiting for the conditions to emerge that allow it to do what it was built to do. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can give it is not more. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can give it is nothing at all. Space, stillness, time to remember what it already knows. This is not a prescription. People with underlying health conditions, those who are pregnant, those with a history of disordered eating, anyone on medication that requires food, should never attempt extended fasting without the direct supervision of a qualified medical professional. The point is not that everyone should fast for 3 days. The point is that your body contains mechanisms of repair, resilience, and renewal so sophisticated, so precisely engineered by millions of years of evolution, that most of us will go our entire lives without ever activating them. And knowing that they exist, knowing what they can do, knowing that the science behind them earned a Nobel Prize and is being studied in the most advanced research institutions on Earth, changes something. It changes how you think about hunger. It, changes how you think about your own biology. And maybe, just maybe, it changes how you think about what you are actually capable of.